Assalamualaikum and good evening, everyone. My name is Muhammad bin Muhammad Nazwi, and today you guys are joining me with working with Weldment in Inventor class. Okay, so before we get started, let me just give you guys a quick tour of our company's website. So at acadsystems.com, this is our company's website. So from here, if you guys are interested in procuring some softwares from us, you guys can keep an eyes out around here. See what So you guys can see what are the promotions and news regarding our, maybe if there's a sale, you guys can get some products for cheaper over here. And so next, here are all of our events and free online lessons. If you guys are interested in any of them, just click on one and let's click on RSVP to book a seat during the class. So next, if you guys have any problems that you guys need help, you can go to our Acad help desk. So from here, create a new ticket as guest. So from here, you guys can put your name, your subject, what sort of thing you need help with. And then from there, you can put your email and your company, the name of your company. So from here, if you guys have any problems with your software, let's say you need some help with installation, can just type here, please help me install AutoCAD, for example. So from there, if you have any attachment files, you can just attach any pictures of your problems. And then from there, you can set your priority. You can usually we try to resolve them as fast as possible, regardless, but you can just put high priority over here. And then for categories, if you want to inquire about technical problems, yes, good afternoon, CCW. If you have any problems when it comes to technical, you can just click on KL Technical if you want to ask me specifically, or it's more convenient for you to ask from Penang, you can also just click on Penang Technical Inquiry. So from there, you can also just click on here on live chat. You can go on live chat. You can just ask straight away from here. Usually during office hours, we have an agent. An agent is what do you call An agent is usually online to answer any of your questions. For example, you Miss Melon and Yuk Shanglai here. Okay. So today, either way, let's continue with our topic. So today, I wanna do a little bit of a lecture about weldment environment in Inventor. So let me just share my Inventor screen. Okay. So let's say from home, you want to open So what is weldment? So let me open a file that's already been done. It's done. Yep. So what is weldment? Weldment is essentially for a way for you to make connections between your products or your parts through welding. So unlike traditional assembly, where you just put constraints over here, for example, over here we have make constraints, we have flush. So you still have to constrain your parts. However, usually in the real world, we don't just put two things at the side like that. We need to have some sort of thing that binds the two parts together. So for example, usually you may have bolts and nuts, and also you have welding. So weldment is under the weld. It's under the weld environment. So from here, there are three main stages in weldments that you need to understand, to do. So firstly, you have preparation, you have welds, and then you have machining. So just like assembly, it is paramount that you do this in the correct order, meaning you have to prepare your parts. Sorry, you have to prepare your parts in a sense that you have to simplify the part and maybe make grooves so that you can apply welds to it. And then from there, you have the welding itself, what type of welding you want to do on your part, and what style of welds you want to do. And then from there is machining. Machining is essentially everything that you do after you've done welding. Maybe you want to put, you've done after you welded your parts, you want to add maybe a little bit more holes, or you want to add maybe a mounting bracket. Well, not really bracket, more like a mounting, well, holes, your screw holes, you can do through machining. However, as I said previously, make sure you do it. If you want to machine after your welds, you have to do it after your welds. You can't do it during preparation and then expect it to work. Well, why is it important to do it by step? Why is it important to do preparation? Why is it important to do machining after your welds? It's because after, when you want to do your drawing, your sketch, when you want to put your technical drawing, when you want to show it to your, maybe your machinist, inside the drawing, you can set whether you want it to, what sort of view you want it, whether you want it to just show the preparations or you want to show it the machining part of it, you can do that, which I will show later. Okay, so let's start with our first model. So over here. So this is quite a simple or rudimentary model. What we have over here is just a piece on the top over here, connected to the bottom piece. So let me just click return. So it's just simply joint between these two parts. So firstly, we can start with preparation, but however, because these two parts are just connected directly, I believe we don't have to do preparations. We can just go straight away to welding. So just click on welds. Over here, there are three different types of weldings. So let's start with fillet. So what is fillet welds? Fillet welds is essentially the type of welding you want to do when you want to connect two parts that are perpendicular to each other, that are at a 90-degree. So unlike groove, welding is when you have two parts. For example, let me just take my two phones over here. You have two parts, and then you have your, hope you guys can see this. You have two parts, and then you want to weld it straight away on top of there, instead of putting fillers in and then melt them. Or I guess you could say it's more towards soldering rather than welding. But however, yeah. So we want to solder these two parts together like that. So either way, let's click on fillet welds. So over here is the GUI for when you want to do fillet welds. So from here you have one and you have two. So what do you so what we have over here is you first have to pick the main surface that you want to weld it on. So for example, maybe one, you can pick this face, and then two, click on two. This is the faces that will be welded towards that base. So for example, over here, we want to weld this face, so we just click on here. So from here, you can see a preview of how the welds is gonna look. So let me just click all the parts. So now if you notice, the weld actually disappeared. Why is that? That usually means your welding is, the size of your welds are too big. So if I put here 5, as you can see, it appears. Unlike before where it disappears. So from here, you can also set how you want the weld sizing to be. So for here, I have the leg length measurements, which is, well, over here, which is the length. and the height of the triangle, since this is a fillet weld, so it is at 90 degrees, so it's going to create a triangle. Or you can also decide it like that. This is, I'm pretty sure this is the hypotenuse, yes. So from here, you can see the difference in sizes. So let me just apply. This is to leg length. Okay. And say, let's say you want to change the size of the weld, so you want to change it, whatever. You can just click on here, edit features, just like usual. What happens if I click on here? This is how it will look. So most predominantly here at the corner, let me just move this. So this is if I have it at truth measurement. Yeah, this is called the truth. If I click on here, it's a slightly smaller than that one. Okay, so either way, let's say you want to delete this part, you can just click here, click on delete. And so right now you are in welds. Let's say you want to do some preparation, or maybe you want to do some machining. So how do you get out of here? You can just click on return. So this will bring you to any other parts. So from Weldment, you can also go to assembly. It works like usual. So let's go back to welds. Another type of weld that I want to show you guys on this part is cosmetic. So what is the function of cosmetic? Cosmetic is just to show that there's a weld over there. It doesn't do anything. So if I click on cosmetic, here you can select the areas, how big you want it to be. Let's just click apply for now. And this is how it will look. So this is simply just a cosmetic bead, meaning if you were to, for example, maybe you want to check your beads. Well, if you notice, there's no function, you cannot use a weld calculator over here when you were to do cosmetic welds. So let me just change that back to fillet weld. Let me just show you guys how the weld calculator works. Hello, Mr. Hadri. Yes, I believe that's everywhere. So now we have our welding. So let's say when we go out here, we have a function called weld calculator. So from here, you can select what type of welding you want to do, where you want to calculate. For example, over here, we have fillet welding between 2 points. So let's just click here. And here you can see all the calculations of your weldings. You have your length. This is, yeah, here we go, sorry. Calculations isn't used to calculate your welds. That is under bead report, I'm sorry. So the function of weld calculator is to calculate how strong your weld is. For example, here we have axial force. As a force, here is a little diagram showing you how it will look like. So from here, this part this feature can help you to decide what type of welding you want to do. So from here, we see that the maximum force, the minimum height is 78 megapascals. So here for the calculation, I will not go into this further because this guide a little bit advanced. So if you notice, let me just delete this part again. Let's do it again. If you notice, when I click on fillet, there is an extend option. So from here, you can select all, or you can also select from and to. So why do you want to use this function? This function is essentially when you want to weld. Well, if I click on fillet over here, you can't select specific points, you can only select faces. So let's say what if you want to weld only between two different points. So how do you do that? In order to do that, you can just use plane. Just like you can use any of these other work features, but I'll just use plane. That's what I usually do. For example, maybe you want to make a weld just between these two small points over here. So what you can do, you can grab your plane and then you can pull it to where you want it to be. For example, maybe over there. And let's make another plane over there. Yep. So from here, if I click on fillet, we can select these two different planes so that the weld will stay inside the plane. So let's select these two faces, face 1 and face 2, and then select from and to, select these two planes. So now as you can see in the preview, the weld is only in between these 2 points. So if I click on OK, yeah, there you go. So let's say you've done your welds, and then now you decided, you know what, after we've done welding this, why not we put a little hole over here? So how do you do that? You do that by using machining function. So over here, click on machining. Here it activates the preparation and machining environment. Just now, if I click on weld, it activates the welds. So if I go to machining, this activates the machining parts. And so just like using edit features in 3D modeling and so on and so forth, you can just go to 2D sketch and select the planes you want to draw it on. For example, let's just draw it on this face. For example, maybe I want let's say a hole over here. I want to, after I've done welding these two parts here, I want to weld a hole over here. So from there, you just select two sketches and then you can just select your point where you want it to be. Let me just put over there. And so now when I put machining, I can click on hole. Yes. You can now machine the hole inside the welds at the same time. So if I click on OK, as you can see, yep. It doesn't go to the weld because the 3D point is on display, not here. So let me just delete. Let me just delete this hole. So in order to make that hole, we have to, if I want it to appear on top of there, let's try to do this again. Maybe, yes, just slightly above. So now what happens if I do machining, 2D sketch, select this plane, select another point. So if I click there, so now if I click on the hole, yes, that should eat into the welds, as you can see over there. So it also depends on where specific plane you draw it on. So if you draw on this face over here, when you click on hole, if the direction goes inside, it doesn't cut into your welds. However, if you click it on top, for example over here, it eats until here, however, the rest remains. So that's for groove. Let's move on to the next type of welding. This is also groove. Okay. So if I click on here, there is also groove. Well, sorry, just now is fillet. This is fillet. So this is groove. So this is the GUI for groove. Essentially, what you want to use groove on is when you want to connect two surfaces that are not on top of each other, that are not perpendicular to each other. For example, on this part, as you can see, the parts are parallel, they're not perpendicular, and then they're on different, they have a length over here. Therefore that. So how do you weld these two faces together? You use the groove welding option. First, you select the first face you want to weld. So I will select this face. And then on the second face, I select here, over here. This is the second face I want it to weld to. And then you have to select the direction you want it to go on. So the direction is just like any other tool. You have to use a work feature over here. For example, here we already have a axis on this plane, so I can just click over there. And as you can see, this is what we get. Now, why does it only go to here? Let's say you want it to go to the end over here. You want the weld to cover the entire face of the entire face of the object. You can just click on here, full weld face and full weld, and click on done or apply. So that's how you make a weld groove. So let's see, this is your part. However, let's say you want to make a little chamfer over here, a little chamfer so that you can weld these two pieces together a lot more smoothly. So that's where preparations came in. So you just select fillet. From here, you can fillet the face however you want. So for example, if I create these two fillets, so from there, when I do welds, select the groove. And then from there, you can also just select these two faces at the top and the bottom. So let's just do it the same way as just now. And there we go. As you can see over here, the welds now went over the fillet. So if I click on full face, same scenario. Doesn't want to do it, it's okay. Oh, sorry. You have to also make sure you select the correct set for phase 1 and phase 2. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. So let's select phase 2. And then from there, click on fill direction. Select this phase. Okay, there we go. As you can see just now, when there is no preview for the welding job, it usually means you did it wrong. Okay. So let me close that. Sorry. You can also do chamfer. Click on welding. You should be able to also do at the edges. So full face weld, second face, same scenario. Yes, there we go. It also works. However, because I believe the welds isn't big enough to cover this part, so it left there bare. Okay. So either way, I believe that is all for this part of the program. So let me show you guys the drawing bits. Let's say you want to create a drawing. Sorry. So from here, just click on new, drawing. Yes, it is not advisable to make it near the welds. I just want to show that you can do that at the same time, but it's not reversible. So from here, can you guys see this screen? Can you guys see this part? Yes, you can. Where is it? Okay, so let me just show you guys this part. So this is our part. Let me just change the view to the top. So what do I mean just now that you have to make sure that you did it in the correct way, the correct, what do you call, the correct sequence. Because over here, you can select what type of model you want to display. So right now I'm displaying the machining bits, meaning everything after the machining part. So let's say you want to just show the assembly, you can also just click on here and it will only show the machining, the assembly parts of the drawing. So if I click on welds, just now you can see that there's holes over here. If we just go to welds, it's empty. There is only the welds. So let me just go to machining. Yes. So if we go to anything, here you can see we have our welding symbol. You can just click on where you want it to be at. So let me just click on there. So from there, you can click on enter, and here you can put based on your, well, right now I don't have a preset on how it will look like, but usually in companies, they have their own presets on how their welding diagram should look like. So from here, you can click. Just now, I believe the height is 5. So we can just put 5 millimeters. And this is our results. Yes. Group chamfer needs to be done before the group weld can be placed. Yes. So if you want to do the groove welds, over here you can do it under preparation. You can't do it at machining. So if I try to machine, sorry, if I try to chamfer this part after I've done what I call welding this part, so what happens is it becomes weird like that, meaning it doesn't follow. So if you want to do so if you want to fillet or you want to chamfer or anything, make sure you do it before. Yes, thank you for that highlight. Okay, so I believe that is all for our class today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.